In a first of its kind, a study conducted into the cost of violence against children in South Africa was conducted by children's rights organization Save the Children South Africa. And this study has revealed that such violence costs the country 238.58 billion rands. The long-term effects of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse and the impact on the country's economy indicate that the real life and economic effects of child abuse in the country need to be addressed urgently. And we are joined to discuss the study as well as the possible interventions needed by the CEO of Save the Children South Africa, Gugu Ndebele, as well as the research manager, Dr. Celia Hsiao. And ladies, welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Much appreciated that you've made time to be with us. The amount that we're talking about, the 258 billion rands, is of the GDP. Is that correct? So I understand how you arrive at that number?
Yeah. Absolutely. 238 billion rands is actually close to 6% of the GDP of 2015.
That's right. So now, how do you arrive at those amounts? Because, you know, GDP would mean economic production. So you throw in abuse of children into that. What is the methodology that you use to arrive at that figure?
Well, it was a very long process. And when you link, the link between abuse and the economy, as you say, is when children experience any type of abuse. We're talking here about physical abuse, we're talking here about sexual abuse, we're talking about emotional abuse, as well as neglect. Any type of these experiences of violence as a child has a significant and profound negative impact on this child's outcomes. So for example, children who are sexually abused they grow up to have about, they're 3.23 times more at risk of developing drug abuse, for example. They're more at risk of a host of negative outcomes, mental and physical health outcomes, severe mental illness, HIV/AIDS, STDs, etc. And all of these things actually have a cost to the economy because it's loss in productivity, loss in human capital. So that is at the crux of what was the analysis, as well as the big thing, which is loss in productivity. Because an individual, the study found an individual who experienced physical violence as a child earns 11.7% less a month than an individual who was not physically abused as a child. You add all of these up, you get to 238 billion rand.
Well, the high incidence of child abuse in Gauteng from a numbers point of view makes sense, but I don't understand in the case of Northern Cape, as you said, there's also high prevalence there because there's a very low population in the Northern Cape. Why would that be the case?
Northern Cape is also the highest in substance abuse, and that's normally a precursor to child abuse. So alcohol and substance abuse is much more prevalent in the Northern Cape, and we see a lot of cases of neglect and substance abuse.
Now, doesn't this make us as a society be a bit desensitized if we are going to talk about the economic effects or the costs of child abuse? I'm just wondering that, you know, once we move it to the economic numbers, people will say, you know, you factor in the cost, then it means you can live with it. Because the ideal here is to reduce child abuse after all, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe Celia can also, because it's two things that we're talking about. It's the social and economic effects.
Agreed.
Yeah, but also in terms of the economic effects, you see, if people respond much better if it hits their purses, because this money that we're not talking about, it's not money that comes from somewhere else. It's our tax.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, when people interact with information, sometimes we say, oh, okay, huge numbers, 238 billion rands. I don't have anything to do with it. But at the end of the day, and we must talk about the programs that you run as Save the Children, that how do we turn our attitudes around? Because every year we've got the 16 days of activism. But when and how do we change our attitude to child abuse as a people? Now, the economic side of things, does it really matter to people? Does it make us pay attention, Celia, from your experience and your observation?
I think absolutely. So I want to just touch on what Gugu said. The study looked at both the social burden as well as the economic cost. So I'll start with the economic cost.
Right.
To be able to say that because we did not prevent violence from happening to our children, that has a direct link to our economy.
Yes.
Put another way, to say that if we can start investing in preventing violence against children in South Africa, we can help to build a stronger economy. What that does is not desensitizing, but rather what it does is it increases or it puts violence against children, at least prevention of it, on the agenda. It prioritizes.
Yes.
It makes it much more important. So, for example, linking it to the Department of Social Development budget, we know UNICEF recently came out with a report that showed that prevention and early intervention, that's where preventing violence against children would fall under, PEI, prevention and early intervention, is less than 1% of the national and provincial DSD budgets alone. So using this economic cost or economic estimate,
yes,
we can push and argue, build this investment case, say, listen, yes, we know there isn't money, but we really, really need to start investing and really finding solutions and working together.
And of course, people who pay attention to those things also can be mobilized to provide assistance and start seeing the value
Absolutely.
of investing in
Yes.
such interventions.
Yes.
Now, how does South Africa compare with other similar type countries or any other country in the world in terms of levels of child abuse?
What I'm going to say is we were very fortunate. We worked with...
Well, just tell us the facts.
Okay.
Give us the cold truth.
I'll give you,
we
one fact.
will have to deal with
Yes.
it. What can we do?
The Asia Pacific region,
Yes.
they did a very similar costing study using a similar model. On average, violence against children cost in that region of the world 2% of their GDP.
Right.
In South Africa, it cost us 6% of our GDP.
Yes.
It's that bad.
Yeah, so we must come to terms with the fact that we're extremely abusive and violent towards children in our society. So the interventions that you, as Save the Children in South Africa, are working on?
We're working at 3 levels, Tim. The first one is to get government to think differently about how it funds prevention programs. Because if you can save on this, maybe you can even deal with the issues of the no-fee schools, or free education. But second, it's how well we plan. We use the study to plan. But we also have interventions because we believe that dealing with violence starts in the home. So we work a lot with parents because positive parenting contributes positively to the outcomes of education. So for us, it's advocacy, it's changing government perceptions around budgeting, and it's changing perceptions of public that it is your concern, it starts with you.
Now, you also mentioned something about substance and drug abuse as a causal factor. Are there any other causal factors that may not be unique in South Africa, but are actually the major contributors to levels of child abuse?
Studies have also found that children who experience fighting at home also are more likely to be abusive themselves. So it's poverty also plays a factor because sometimes the stresses that parents go through result in them being much more violent to children. So it's a combination of things. It's economic factors, it's social factors like substance and drug abuse, it's just general crime.
And in any challenge, there will always be some opportunities to turn things around. I wonder if in the context of our society and our makeup as a people, we have such opportunities to reduce levels of abuse. Celia?
The question is yes, there are definitely opportunities. It's a big challenge, but at the same time, it can also be a very good opportunity. And that one is of working together. So we often have discussions of why are we working in silos? We're a child rights organization. There are many other groups out there that also want to do the same thing. We all have the same goals. We want to prevent violence against children. But what we're not very good at is coming together within civil society organizations, coming together with government, with academics to do research, with the general public. And for Save the Children South Africa, that's a big part of our campaign, and the work that we're doing is how do we bring people together? So it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. You have lots of people with solutions, with good ideas, with the intention of doing something good, but we need to bring them together.
Now, Gugu, the other thing is people who are not part of it think that it's somebody else's problem. Even now as we're talking, I can imagine some viewers are thinking to themselves, I don't abuse children. What has that got to do with me? Or people feel powerless. That's one. Number two, feel that you are actually preaching to the converted, the people who would abuse children anyway, do not listen or watch or care about the statistics that we're sharing. What can we do as ordinary individual citizens to help reduce the levels of abuse against children?
I think the first thing is to speak out. The thing about child violence is that it's so silent because it happens in private homes, and and children are unable to talk about it. So for us as Save the Children, what we encourage is for people, if you see it, it is your concern because that's your future, so speak out. And secondly, to create a platform for children to be able to come out. Just today I had a call from a parent whose child has been abused. The police were saying it's none of their business.
Even now?
Even today, Tim, before I came to this interview, there's a call, and the police are saying, the woman is nasty. So if we talk about it, people see us as an avenue for them to raise their issues for interventions to happen.
But if they want to find out more, how do they get in touch with Save the Children, whether they be NGOs or small community organizations that want to be part of this bigger movement?
We would welcome them being part of it because we believe it is a societal issue. They can contact us on www.savethechildren.org.za or 012-430-7775. Let's
Save the Children. Their activism, 16 days, we know is there every year, but the only way we're going to appreciate that we're making a difference is if the levels of violence against children and women are brought down. And according to the study, up to 6% of the country's GDP is the cost estimated to be the outcome of the levels of abuse in our nation. And you and I can do a lot to help reduce abuse of children.